I had no idea what I was doing when I packed that bag and left the house that night, but I never went back. Welcome to Wandering the Wild Mess with Heather Morgan. I am so happy you're here. I'm starting off just really reminiscing about what's coming up for me. I'm a big dates person, and I know as much as I preach, everything always works out, and we just need to be positive and grateful. I oftentimes have challenges getting out of my own mind, which I'm sure many of us do. And with everything going on in my life right now, I have recently been reflecting so much on what's up and coming in the next week or few days is 2 years since I just left. And when I say left, meaning said, I want a divorce and then followed through with it. And I think a lot of people in relationships, whether you've been married or not, there's a moment where you kind of say something in the heat of the moment, but it's not really, you hadn't really thought it through. And it's probably not exactly what you wanted, but you're just feeling some sort of way. I think sometimes our emotions get the best of all of us, right? But when I said that, I never thought like I didn't premeditate that moment. I just said it and I left. And I don't even know when I look back how I even had the courage to just roll with it. And I know that the biggest thing was having the support of my friends because I don't think that I could have done all of that without support. And I think this is just a little, I'm going to send this reminder out to people because I feel like, and especially men more than women, even, but we all have these times. And that, when we need someone to talk to, we got to reach out. We can't stay in our own heads because it doesn't get us to where we need to be. And it can take us down a pretty dark and scary path in our own minds that, again, isn't even reality, but we just start trekking down that path. And if we don't let someone help us by turning on a switch or lighting a flame or, you know, bringing in a candle, and that's kind of what relationships and friendships do for us, then we can be in a pretty dark spot. And so I think in this, where I'm going here is I've been thinking a lot about when am I going to have it all figured out? I I think that's just a point in time where we kind of all are searching for like when is it all going to make sense? And I think sometimes when you're in a relationship, you're in this marriage with someone, whether you're enjoying all of it or not, I think you have to realize in any relationship like it's never going to be perfect all the time. And it's always going to have its ups and downs. But I think there's a calmness in that stability of having that constant person in your life. I think that's probably one of the best feelings as humans that we can have is when we know that we have one person in our corner that the whole idea of for better or for worse is going to be there for us. And we're not always going to be rainbows and sunshine. We're not always going to be our best selves. We're not always going to be happy because we're still humans with emotions, but we have this rock that's there through all of those things. So it's almost like hiking up the mountain with a partner, knowing that like if I get winded for a minute, at least they'll help me like, "Hey, I don't know if I can make it up. I'm getting tired." "No, you got this. You can do it. We're almost there." This whole thing. And don't get me wrong, there's times it's like, "Let me hike this spot, we'll meet in the middle." Like, do your thing, I'll do mine. But knowing you just have that person is such honestly, probably such an underrated thing. I think we kind of if you've had it, you may forget how wonderful it is and not and think it's just, you know, probably don't appreciate it as much when we have those things. But when we don't anymore, I think when you reflect back, you realize what a blessing it was to have a partner that wanted to venture up the mountain with you. And I think that's why when people ask me why I held on to so much guilt for leaving, I think that's why. Because I never wanted to leave him without a, a partner to travel up the mountain with him. I didn't want to do that. And the more that I've soul searched and looked inward and trying to heal and work on some of the things that I know that I need to do better moving ahead, I think about the line from the Zach Bryan song, which, I'm always going to go to music. And I have a story about one of his concerts. So I need to share that. But there's a line that says, "Grab me by the hands, just as calloused as I am. Say you're proud." I think the that line just says so much because I think so many of us are aiming to be great and wonderful, but we never know if we're enough. And I think that can start in childhood when you're younger. You're constantly looking for validation from your parents, your siblings, your friends, people around you. And then as you get older, it starts being your colleagues in your career, your leaders, your partner, boyfriend, whomever, whatever is in your industry, any kind of like, oh, what I'm doing is enough. I think we're all just constantly looking for someone to validate that what we're doing is enough. And the hard part is I truly know, but it's easier it's easy to know. It's sometimes hard to put into actual like executing that. But we have to validate ourselves instead of just putting the burden on others. Because when we seek constant validation from external, then we're always going to be in that cycle of needing external validation from someone. And there's just some times that you're not going to get it. And that's going to dictate your happiness or your mood. And that's like not what we want because it's out of our control. So when we learn to validate what we need within ourselves, then we have the control to kind of be steady with being proud of who we are. But I still think the beautiful idea of someone that grabs you by the hand, just as calloused as I am, and says you're proud is the beauty of a partnership with someone that truly loves you and means it. And that's where I'll enter. I don't know what I'm doing because I could paint that pretty picture, but I left because I needed something more. And I feel like to have changed my life so much, I realized lately that there feels this immense pressure for me to figure out what was the reward for leaving? Where are you going? How are you making yourself with such a much better life than you had? Or why didn't you just stay? Because you didn't know what you were doing then, and you still don't. So it's kind of like, do we ever, right? Do we ever know what we're doing? I don't think so. So enter San Francisco. So during this whole I don't know what I'm doing phase, I had been spending a lot of time in the office working because I didn't have this is prior to me being or maybe I was back in the house. I don't know. It was the whole whirlwind. I don't even know. And my emotions were similar to how they're feeling now lately. I've been in a different headspace, and it was one of those where you're just rash making a decision like, I'm going to go to San Francisco to see Zach Bryan. He's playing, so I'm going. So, and it's literally like, I don't know, the week if before the concert, I end up finagling this whole trip. I'm just gonna solo go by myself. I hadn't been to San Francisco in years, and he's playing at the Warfield, and I'm like, sure, downtown San Francisco, book the flight, do all the things, get to San Francisco. And I remember I'm buying my ticket, which was way too much resale, obviously, like a week before the concert. And there was like 2 seats on the end. And I'm like, okay, if I pick the end seat, then someone's gonna have to pick the seat next to me, and they're gonna have to one ticket because the other people have already picked their seats, right? So if I pick the one on the end, someone's gonna have to sit next to me. So maybe I'll meet a friend because it'll have to be someone else going by themselves, and they obviously probably don't know those other people. So I buy my ticket. I have a couple drinks at the hotel bar before I go down, and then I'm like, I walk there because it's still light enough, and I mean, I got scolded that that wasn't my best idea, but my hotel was really close. So I walk there and I'm like, okay, I see all these people in line. Like, it's crazy, this line outside the Warfield. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, wow. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to need a drink while I'm staying in this line. And so I go into some like little convenience store that has liquor, and I buy like a couple of beers and a little couple mini bottles of tequila. And so and then I make my way to find the end of this line, and I can't find it. Like, I don't know where it ends. I'm kind of asking people, like, I don't even know. So finally I'm walking around and I get to the front of the Warfield, and I'm like, this is really the line? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, look, I have some beers, some tequila. Like, if you guys just let me come in the line with y'all, like, here you go. Perfect trade. They were like, of course, because it was just me. So meet these friends in line. We're drinking the tequila. We get in, all the things. I'm buying merch, which I've never even really been that girl that's buying merch, but I swear, like, suddenly the one thing I knew after was getting divorced, I just wanted to buy merch. It was, I don't know. It was like a switch flipped. So I'm buying merch and I'm waiting and grabbing a drink. I get to my seat and there's a guy there, and look at that. So he's by himself at the concert. So we get to chatting like before the show starts. So I have all this merch and I'm chatting. I'm just like, he's like, oh, you're here by yourself? And I'm like, yeah. And I was like, you? And he was like, yeah. And sure enough, he had been going through a breakup. Someone that he'd been with her for a decent amount of time. They weren't married, but they had been together. I feel like it was like 5 or 7 years. I'm trying to remember. It was like a good amount of time. And she decided she needed some space, and they were not together at the moment. But he was kind of holding out some hope. And as he's telling me these things, so now him and I are just new, you know, besties at this moment. So and I am not talking really about my divorce at this time, but I just said I had to come to this. This album's been healing me. And so he's kind of telling me their whole thing. And I'm just in my head going like, this woman is not going to get back with this guy. Like, she's like, the things he's telling me, I'm like, I don't even know why he's holding out hope. But it's easier as an outsider to see that than when you're in it. In your own heart of hearts, you want to hold on to something and believe that it'll be different. So no judgment there. So we watched the concert was like amazing, and it's crazy because I'm sure Zach will never play in a venue like that. Like, I saw him play in Knoxville, and the huge one like I talked about, and now he's playing, even bigger stadiums, and arenas. So that was cool for me to be there. So I'm jamming out, um, loving my life, like having the best time, being the happiest type girl. Like it was just such a fun concert. So we go to leave and I have all this merch. And so this nice guy ends up like carrying my merch, and we're like, I have to go to the restroom. He's carrying my stuff around, blah, blah, blah. He's like, "You're going to walk back to your hotel from here?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I don't really know if you should walk." Cause he was from San Francisco and he was such a nice guy. Like he was a baseball coach and a teacher at a high school in San Francisco, and just like a super nice human. And I'm definitely a sucker for like nice guys. And I also just felt bad that whole thing with that girl, it's like I just wanted to shake this man and be like, there are hundreds of women in this world and at this concert, like don't don't invest any more time in someone that doesn't want you. But anyways, we end up having a great time. He ends up walking me to my hotel, which was super nice. And you know, I learn even more all about him. And I think about that a lot. Well, not a lot, but it crosses my mind sometimes because he got my number. Like, obviously, he doesn't live here. He's talked about coming to Tennessee, but I remember that he had told me that, like, it didn't end up working out with her, but he really needed that night that we spent together, that I just was so fun, and it was just such a great time. He remembers how, like, excited, I got when Oklahoma Smoke Show came on, and that was my song, and it was just, like, just exactly, like, what he needed to see, like, the happiness and all of the things. And I guess that story kinda makes me happy because even when we don't know what we're doing, we should just do stuff, and then we find things that make us happy. Like, I think sometimes when we get overthinking and stuck in our heads, it's easy to just not wanna do anything, not want to adventure out, not wanna take new chances, wanna get stuck on the, "Why is it like this way? Why don't I know what I'm doing? Why is it so hard? Why do I feel this way?" But if we just say, "Let me just go out and do stuff," then you have the opportunity to either bring light to someone else's life or have light brought to yours. And don't get me wrong, I had the best time. I went to a concert solo and left with a date, if you call it. I mean, we basically went to the concert together. And in my eyes, I'm sure he would agree the same. And it was just like, hey, we're both like, we don't know what we're doing. We had been with these partners forever, and now we won't go to a concert alone. And we leave with someone that is like super fun and just like open to having like a really exciting time and carefree moment. Like I loved it. And I still don't know really why I was just actually, y'all, in this moment, I'm like, that's what I need. That's what I need. I need to just go somewhere new and see where it takes me. So if you're listening, that's gonna be my plan. I feel like that's when I think about what makes me happiest in life, besides like being in the water, being on a mountain, it's just being able to meet people and just vibe with life. And I'm balancing so much right now the difference between life's not that serious and Heather, you're an adult and you need to figure out your life. And the weird thing is that I came across something just recently that was talking about it, and I don't know if this is really someone, but it was written like it was. And she was an 85-year-old, and it was basically like she said, if I had to live my life over. And it's like, I'd like to make more mistakes next time. I'd relax, I would limber up, I would be sillier than I ever had been this trip. I would take fewer things seriously. I would take more chances. I would climb more mountains and swim more rivers. I would eat more ice cream and less beans. I would perhaps have more actual troubles, but I'd have fewer imaginary ones. Basically, she says she was really sensible the whole time in her life. She was always prepared, but she lived so many years ahead of each day and was always prepared with a raincoat and a parachute. But if she'd have it to do again, she'd travel lighter than she'd have. She would start barefoot earlier in the spring and stay that way later in the fall. I'd pick more daisies. And I'm giving us this I'm wrapping this into what I'm saying because I think there's always that challenge between I'm not doing enough, I don't know what I'm doing, and I have to validate whatever I'm doing with myself more than ever because I'm walking up this mountain alone right now. And whenever you're walking up the mountain alone, I think it's just there's benefits because you get to choose the path yourself. It's you. You go where you wanna go. But with a partner, someone kinda cheers you on as you try to navigate, and you get to do the same for them. So it's like, which one do you want? Because they both come with worries and troubles. Both are gonna have hard times and both are gonna feel easier. I think when I look back to myself almost 2 years ago now saying those words that I can't believe so seriously came out of my mouth, "I want a divorce." I didn't realize how much my entire being would change. And I don't know if anything can really prepare you for that. I think there's a sense of failure that has to be learned to be let go of, that you have to just process and learn to let go. And I think it's just like grief and the same as if in the grief of my father, which Father's Day just passed. So that was a difficult day for me. And I keep it in my own head. I try not to bring others down with that, but it was definitely on my mind. And, there's days where I'm just grateful that I had my father and, I talk to him in my own way and everything's fine. And then other days it just hits me like, this stinks that I cannot just call him. And this is really hard. And if he was here, it would be like this. But you know what I mean? Some days it's hard and some days it's easy. And I think that's kind of life. I think that's kind of what when we're trying to figure it all out, it's like some days are gonna be hard and some days are gonna be easy. And we just have to kind of go with the ebb and flow of the reality that no matter what path we're on, it's not gonna just be this straight shot to simple. It's not gonna ever just be this place where everything just always falls into place. And even as a firm believer of everything works out as it should, even as someone that has smiled through some of her darkest days and seen it work out the way that it should, I have to be realistic in saying that it's still hard sometimes to not know what you're doing. But I think what I'm coming to the conclusion now is that when you're trying to figure out what you should do or when's the right time, just decide. All the spinning your wheels and thinking about it doesn't help or move us along any further. We're running on a treadmill hoping to get to, some other destination. Well, it's not going to happen. We need to just make the decision and start going. And we don't really have to know what we're doing because the good news is, which I learned in this, that you can change your mind again at any time. You can make a decision today and you could change it 10 years from now. And as I look at a lot of different paths I have in front of me right now and want to understand where to go, I think I just want to choose what makes my heart feel happiest. What matters in the scheme of life? And I know I've talked about this before and you're like, what is her infatuation with death? And it's not that, but I just think when you think about what would future me, and not that I want to jump to the future, but if I'm laying there, what would I want me to have chose? I think happiness, adventure, love, laughter, those kinds of things are going to be always the things you're going to want more of when your time's over. You're going to wish you had more of those moments. You're going to wish you could have spent more time with people that cared about you deeply and less time about worrying about the ones that don't. More time thinking about how much you enjoyed your time in the mountains, on the water, taking a moment to just do nothing with someone you care about over proving everyone that you're good enough for anything or feeling some kind of way about life and why all the things in your past that you're upset about even happened. Because they did, and they're over. And you made choices, and now here you are, and you're presented with more choices. And it's just going to continue to be an ongoing upward, make more choices. So, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing still. And it's been almost 2 years. But I do know more that it's just always going to be okay, no matter what. So I'll end this by saying that really the message here is no matter what choices we make in life, we are not sure ever where they're going to lead us. But if we trust that it will all work out, I promise you it will. And if we just take a step back and go, what do I want to do? What makes me happy? And stop worrying about what if all of this could go wrong? What if everything goes right? Too many times we spend way too much energy worrying about all the things that could go wrong instead of just thinking, what if everything goes perfect? And when I say perfect, I mean perfect in the way of, absolutely wonderful, but still has its moments, right? And so it's okay to let yourself choose what you want to do in that moment. And if it doesn't continue to be what you want, then change it. But you have to decide. Don't run on that treadmill hoping to get somewhere that you're not already at. That's literally what overthinking about things are instead of just making decisions. Running on a treadmill, expecting to get somewhere. Thanks so much for listening to Wandering the Wild Mess with Heather Morgan. You matter.